The bike was clean and I was excited to be heading back to the USA today. 15 minutes into the ride, it was raining once again. That's just how it goes. As I made my way out of the Kelowna area and crossed the bridge over Okanagan Lake, it felt both like another day on the bike and also like another moment to be cherished. The idea of having come this far and heading to Washington State energized me. The ride was exciting and the forest-covered mountains and lakes in British Columbia were inviting. The clouds rolled across the peaks as if it was a time-lapse video, but I was seeing it in real time. Rugged and remote once again was the feel of the environment. Hours passed and I chose to cross the border at Sumas to avoid Vancouver, BC traffic. It was still a 1 to 2 hour wait to get across the Sumas border. Even though I was about 3,400 miles from home, crossing the border back into the USA brought a sense of being that much closer. I was 30 minutes from Bellingham, Washington, and set course to visit friends. It was really a special feeling to connect with people you know while on the road, in a setting that was so very different. Serendipitous encounters with friends and family was a fitting welcome home to this first day back in the US. It was a short ride today. I had a friend who I worked with about 20 years ago who lived in Kingston, Washington, which connects to Olympic National Park. It was a brief ferry ride to the peninsula. I bought tickets, boarded the ferry, and lined up by the other motorcycles on the boat. Quick and beautiful ride across from the mainland. I barely had time to query the other motorcyclists for some local routes. One stop, the line of bikes left the ferry like the start of MotoGP. It was like a video game through the twists and turns. I texted my friend and he showed up for a reunion at the cafe. It was comfortable, and the 20 years in between now and our last encounter had no significance. We talked about the many things that led up to all of us being exactly where we were at that moment. The conversation was effortless. Time wasn't a factor. It was a great thing. A great night's sleep, although a bit chilly, I woke up and got ready for the day, anticipating an early start. As I moved through the Olympic National Park, passing Port Angeles and on the way to Forks, what few dark clouds existed all moved into the background. The horizon was clear and sunny. Riding Crescent Lake was a joy. The road along the lake was a ribbon of twisty goodness, and the bike leaned side to side, with the throttle revving through the corners. The fragrant air from the lake and forest moved through my helmet as the motorcycle carried me forward. Big smiles in my helmet, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. It was the last day of my third week on the road, and this day was a clear celebration of 3 weeks on the road. Hours passed and the miles added up. I found myself within minutes of the Pacific Ocean. The trip meter since I left Boca Raton was now clicking past 5,000 miles. It was just a number, like 21 days on the road is a number. Yet it was an indication that stuff happened, and was happening. People interactions of the last couple of days and the range of experiences over the 3 weeks have been a gift. In many ways, I felt like the architect of this experience and of the joy I was feeling. Yet there were forces at play, serendipitous occurrences, and energy I was also feeling that was a gift from the universe. I arrived in Long Beach, Washington for the evening. After settling into the hotel, I took a walk to the beach. The seagulls were in flight, the wind was blowing, the tide was coming in, and the glimmering sunlight in the surf was magical. The sound of the waves, the wind through my hair, and the smell of the ocean, it all brought me even deeper into the experience. People were walking along the beach, some were flying kites, kids were playing in the sand. It was all a symphony of stillness, and I experienced it all in a timeless moment. As the tide receded, I followed the surf to touch the ocean. Just like on my last cross-country experience, a handshake was exchanged with the Pacific Ocean in an act of gratitude. I could go no further west. It was time to make that easterly turn tomorrow and begin the journey home. Local steamed clams, a couple of glasses of wine, and ice cream, of course, concluded the celebration of that evening. I knew that tomorrow would bring me one step closer to home, and that was a good thing. 3 weeks on the road and innumerable timeless moments full of wonderful experiences. On the conclusion of week 3, it was meaningful to celebrate by touching the Pacific Ocean. I had concluded over the last several days that today would be the day to make that easterly turn and begin to chip away at the miles between where I was and getting home. I started the day as if it was just another one, on the road, with excitement for the ride and no quota of miles to do. I rode south down US 101, crossing into Oregon from Washington early in the morning. A strong sun and brisk air, with a constant ever so slight haze hanging over the shoreline, was the setting for the ride. I arrived at Cannon Beach, Oregon, and the iconic rocky shore with outcroppings of massive rocks sat conspicuously in the ocean. Haystack Rock and the other iconic rock formations uniquely define the Oregon coastline. The morning ride and the Oregon coast with quaint beach towns was a parting gift. I rode a bit more down the coast to Manzanita before saying goodbye and turning east. Twisty, lonely roads brought me inland, and the temperature began to rise. As I moved closer to McMinnville, I was entering wine country. There were fields of vegetables, hazelnuts, and finally vines as far as the eye could see. Arriving in McMinnville, an historic downtown in the heart of Willamette Valley, I stopped for lunch. The streets were dotted with tasting rooms, and clearly this place could have been a good base of operations for wine tasting. I had contemplated a double overnight, or at least one night here to immerse myself in the Oregon wine experience, but the route home was calling me. I felt complete and that the trip had served its purpose. I still had about 3,200 miles to go, which I was targeting to complete in the next 6 days. The trip wasn't over, but it was clearly going to be primarily about moving fast and heading home. I was contemplating the 3,200 miles, and there was a recognition that was more to do, and yet a feeling that it was all complete. With gratitude for the experience, it was now an opportunity to ride home with a feeling that blessed things happened each day. I had a spectacular experience over the last 3 weeks. Innumerable timeless moments filled with wonderful experiences that I know had shaped me. I passed near Portland traffic before turning to follow the Columbia River. I was on the Columbia River near Cascade Locks, Oregon. As good a place as any to call it a day. The Pacific Ocean was behind me and home was down the road. Today was the first day of what might be termed the big push, the beginning of 3,200 plus miles returning home. However, it didn't feel like a big push. The bike was moving fast on the interstate, but I was sitting perfectly still on the motorcycle. Still on the seat as the bike carried me forward at 80 plus miles per hour. There was a stillness inside. The day started following the Columbia River on I-84 East. I was surprised how beautiful riding on an interstate could be. The Columbia River Gorge and the Dalles Dam provided an iconic backdrop to the ride. The day progressed and the distance between me and the Columbia River increased. Into Idaho, the heat of the day followed me and the goal was to keep moving and let the air flow. The temperature, the buffeting of the wind, and the traffic were all part of the isness of the day. This was just the way it was. This trip had the effect of rooting me more firmly in the moment, in the now. There was an acceptance of the miles over the coming days. There was something to be done and something that would be achieved. My attention was focused on sitting still on the motorcycle, relaxed and yet engaged fully in the ride, twisting the throttle, leaning the bike, looking far and wide and moving through the environment as my breath was relaxed. There was a rhythm to it all and an orchestra of activity happening. I was there witnessing everything. I was simply sitting still at 80 miles an hour. I had planned on getting home to Florida in 5 days. There was a hurricane on a potential track to impact the state. If I wasn't home before the storm made landfall, I would have to wait it out somewhere else for several days. Clearly, more daily miles would need to be traversed. So, I was in effect in a race with a hurricane. Rising early and hitting the road, each day now going east, I would lose an hour and adjust to the time change. Miles and miles of straight riding. I had 1,400 miles to go over the next 2 days. I was hoping the hurricane would not impact gas supplies once in Florida, but there was nothing I could do about it, so I hoped for the best. I've talked about how there are so many experiences in a day, innumerable experiences, and that being in the moment produces this sense of timelessness. Experience happens, and it could be minutes, hours, or days, and there isn't a sense of elapsed time. There are just moments. I rode 652 miles on this day and was on the road for 10.5 hours, not including breakfast, the prep, and cleaning up afterward. Sounds like a long day on the motorcycle, and it was. Sounds like a lot of miles, and it was. Did it feel like 10.5 hours? What does that even feel like? It was as if time had no relevance on this day. I felt as if I was catapulted through the experience of the day, just slipping through and into moment after moment. That was the feeling every day on this journey. Sitting on the motorcycle is a meditation, a practice, a discipline. Maybe it's a form of yoga. The act of being in the saddle and feeling fused with the motorcycle and the environment is an active dance that is effortless and timeless, where I am part of the experience and separate at the same time. I'm animated on the bike, engaged, and aware of all that needs to be coordinated and done. It flows and happens. Yet, I am there and still, in awareness, just seeing it all happen. When I reflect on 10.5 hours on the bike, or I think about tomorrow's long ride, there follows some uneasiness. However, when I know that it will just happen and I simply just have to be, then the doing of it all becomes timeless. It just becomes timeless moments and yoga on the motorcycle. What a glorious fucked up riding day that was challenging for all the wrong reasons. 12.5 hours to ride 685 miles. I should have been about 200 more miles down the road, or at least finished 3 hours earlier. 2 hours of being pelted by rain and the wash from trailer trucks. No visibility. Boy, was it dangerous. I was thankful that those tires really displaced the water on the road. St. Louis traffic wasn't that bad. Into Illinois, then Kentucky. Nashville at rush hour, traffic accidents, and super messed up traffic everywhere. A detour, and I think I added more time. Chattanooga, and boom. There was 25 miles or so of backed up traffic. Riding in the shoulder, just go. All the hotels were booked. Fast forward to the nighttime riding, I made my way to I-75 into Georgia. The day was long, in hours and miles, and I was feeling it. 700 plus miles more tomorrow. I would arrive at home. How did I get home? What had just happened? This was day 27 on the road, and I had no sense of elapsed time. The trip seemed like it had been my reality for longer than I could remember, and yet now it was the last day on the road for this journey. Well, it was a blink of an eye. I think that's true of all experiences. When it's gone and past, it feels like an instant. It's only when you reflect on the experiences you've had, big or small, that you realize there have been innumerable timeless moments to recount. Stuff happened, and it was good. Good to be alive, good to be involved in the dance of life, and good to be here now. I throttled all day, ticking down the 728 miles until arriving home. The heat ramped up to an oven-baking temperature of 96. There were caravans after caravans of electrical utility trucks, tree trimming crews, and rescue response teams heading south all day. All the resources were being sent and staged in preparation for Hurricane Doreen. As I started to move through more familiar surroundings, the Florida afternoon rainstorms doused me. At 96 degrees, there was no need to put rain gear on. The rain was a welcome occurrence. The realization of the journey ending became very real in the last 30 minutes of riding. The idea of transitioning to a new rhythm back at home and off the road played in my head. The lists of stuff, the relationships, the thoughts of the past and of the future, all flooded my mind as if it was a conditioned response. Thoughts, and more thoughts flooded my head. I was excited to be arriving home, but there was also a range of other feelings. Stop, I had to say. Enough. No more thoughts and no more thinking. As I sat on the bike those last few miles, I caught myself. I was unconscious in thought, but I caught myself. Thoughts and the mental movies were playing in my head. I found my breath on the bike. As I continued riding from the seat on the motorcycle, I sat back down into the moment, into the now. That was the theme of the entire journey. For the briefest of time in those remaining miles, the effortlessness of being in the moment on the road now required some additional diligence. The practice of being in the moment requires a bit more diligence when off the road. I remembered that. I felt the stillness again as I throttled closer to home. I felt waves of gratitude for the journey I was just on and for the continuing journey of my life. I played the song in my helmet, Tomorrow Never Knows, by the Beatles from the album Revolver, as I rode those final miles home. Turn off your mind, relax, and float downstream. Stillness in breath and in being was what I felt. Acceptance of it all, of the isness, and rooted in the now with gratitude and hopefulness. I was joy. I am and I am joyful. As I turned into the driveway of my home, the garage door raised and Jeanette stepped out. Smiles on both our faces with a sense of reunion and a celebration for what is. I was home. These journeys have taught me much and allowed me to experience, feel, and recognize universal truths. Being on the road is a spiritual practice, and it gave me empirical data to feel these universal truths at the core of my being. I was in the moment. The journey was sparked by some need I felt at my core. I knew that this journey, like others, was a catalyst for that inward journey. I knew travel would quicken the experience of awakening to those truths that I held deep within my being. I wasn't running away or to something, but I felt the need to further ignite awareness. More than all other journeys, on this one, I was more deeply immersed in the moment. There was presence and stillness. I was accepting of what is. There were innumerable timeless moments that I was experiencing. There was yoga on a motorcycle, a practice. While it may have felt effortless and natural, there was a deep spiritual practice and physical as well.